All right, in this video, we are talking about probability distributions. So as you can see on the top of the screen, that is a probability distribution. Remember, there are 3 rules of probability distributions. So rule number 1, your x's or your outcomes are quantitative. Rule number 2, the probabilities of x's are between 0 and 1. And then that third rule is that the probabilities of the x's has to sum to 1. So they have to add up to 1. All right, so I'm going to use that third rule to help me answer my first question, or to fill in this missing hole. So that missing hole, I know that all of my numbers have to add up to 1. So I'm going to do 0.30 plus 0.15 plus, I don't know what that one is, I'm going to skip it for now. So plus 0.20 plus 0.15 plus 0.05. So I took all of those probabilities and I added them all up. And when I add them all up, I get 0.85. Okay, but if they have to sum to 1, they have to add up to 1. So I could do 1 minus 0.85 to get 0.15. So that's what goes in that missing hole right there. So the probability that x equals 2 is 0.15. Now I can use that to help me answer the rest of my questions. So on my second question over here, this means I'm finding the probability that x is less than 2. Well, what are my numbers that are less than 2? Well, here's 2. Which numbers are less? Less is to the left, right? So I've got the probability that x equals 1 is less than 2. And then 0 is also less than 2. So now I just need to find those numbers from my table. So I've got 0.15, which was the probability that x equals 1. And then 0.30, which is the probability that x equals 0. And then add those together, and I get 0.45. So the probability that x is less than 2 equals 0.45. All right, moving on to my next problem. I am looking for the probability that x is greater. So this symbol means greater than 3. So I'm going to go to the 3, and greater than means I'm going to go to the right. If you also notice, this arrow is pointed to the right, which means on my table, I'm going to go to the right. All right, so the numbers that are greater than 3 are the x equals 4 and the x equals 5. So then I figure out, well, the probability that x was 4 is 0.15. The probability that x is 5 is 0.05. Add them together, and I get 0.20. So I've got the probability that x is greater than 3 equals 0.20. Now our last one's a little bit different, because now on this last one, it's asking for the probability that x is greater than or equal to 3. So that little line on the bottom means or equals to. So this is greater than. Notice the arrow is going to the right, and then it's or equal to. So now I'm going to start at that 3. So now I've got the probability that x equals 3 plus the probability that x equals 4 plus the probability that x equals 5. And I add them together. So I start at the 3 and I go to the right. So 0.20. Remember, I'm only adding the probabilities, not the outcomes. Plus 0.15 was this number. So I started with my 0.2, then my 0.15, and then the probability that x is 5 is 0.05. And I add those all together to get 0.40. So the probability that x is greater than or equal to 3 is 0.40. And that's all there is to it.